And a happy Friday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Hope you've had a good work week, and we are going to break down everything you need to know about the weekend that lies ahead and give you a sneak peek preview about what's going to be in store weather-wise as we go into next week. And obviously, a lot of your eyes are probably already ahead on next week because it is going to be graduation week all over Central Georgia. So, of course, we are going to go ahead and give you a bit of a preview about what the forecast stands like as of right now. Again, a lot's going to change until we officially get there, but let's break down everything that you need to know. So we did get a new update to your drought monitor as of yesterday morning. We did actually see some areas see the drought improve, especially over here in kind of the sector of western Central Georgia, where we did see this patch of an extreme drought get trimmed back over to the west and farther up to the north. We have this patch of a moderate drought now just to the northeast of us as you make your way just to the south of Augusta, but overall there wasn't too much change, and this is coming after we got some pretty substantial rainfall amounts across many areas here in Central Georgia. Take a look at your rainfall for the month of May and the rainfall that we did take into account. It was going to be back on the 6th and the 7th, so that was getting into last Wednesday into Thursday morning, where we did have widespread showers and more so some thunderstorms that continued to dump a lot of rain over the area. So about 2.3 inches of rain in one day. And obviously when you supplement it with what we saw the day before, all in all, about a total of 2.5 inches of rain here in the Macon area. Some areas saw even more rainfall than that. Just giving you an idea that we are in a very bad drought as of right now. Those are pretty substantial rainfall totals to see over the course of not only just one day, but over the course of a week. So it's going to take a whole lot more where that came from in order to pull us out of those drought conditions completely. But since then, we've had 2 days that we have recorded rain, nothing really too substantial in nature. We go back into the 9th, which was the following Saturday, last Saturday, and we did have about 0.2 of an inch of rain, pretty close to 1/4 of an inch. And then as of 2 days ago, we did see only 1/100 of an inch of rain, so really just talking about simply a trace of rain, but it did add an extra tally onto our total so far for the month. 3.38 inches of rain compared to our average of 3.1 that we typically see in the month of May. So whatever happens, we don't see a drop of rain for the rest of the month, which is definitely not looking to be the case. We already have some rain chances that are back in the forecast. We would end this month above average, which would make for the first time that we have seen a green box pop up on this 2026 and even going back into the end of 2025 rainfall graphic. So far, we're just about 2.25 of an inch of rainfall above where we should be at this point in May. Now, this box, of course, is probably going to slim down and going to get lower and lower. But all in all, for the total so far this year, 4.21 inches below average. And in fact, how much above average we are right now, that's more substantial than any deficit that we do have for each of the past 4 months. But it has been a stretch of 4 months, and if we go all the way back into last September, that was going to be the first month of the drought that really kind of kick-started this trend. Last August was the last time we had a green box on this graphic. As we went into the end of 2025, September, October, November, and December all had red boxes, and we just continued that into the beginning of the new year. So it's very pleasant to finally see a green box, and we know that box is going to remain green as we go into the end of the month. But it is going to be a great start to your weekend forecast. Outdoor plans on your Friday and Saturday, go ahead and let them fly. But we'll talk about everything that you need to know, especially on Saturday, because it is going to be definitely on the warmer side, even borderline hot, as we are going to be near 90 starting tomorrow. And then we are going to reintroduce some low rain chances that will start each and every day once we get into the end of the weekend. We'll talk about why that is coming up shortly as well. So a walk around the quad, beautiful blue skies settling in across Central Georgia. Here as we approach the midday hour on Friday, it looks like we have plenty of patches of some green grass. We have plenty of sunshine. Honestly, there's not much going on the walk around the quad. We can see down here where the flags are at half mast right now. You can see that the flags are blowing away from the camera, so we have a bit of an easterly breeze that is still lingering in the forecast. The winds are also going to be an important factor in your forecast over the course of this weekend. Current numbers over in the eastern United States, nestled somewhere in the 60s and the 70s. It's once you go back over to the west, you see more widespread 70s, 75 in Wichita, Oklahoma City, 77 in Little Rock, 79 in San Angelo. And then as you get along the Gulf Coast, starting to spot some 80s in Laredo, Houston, over to New Orleans. And then you get into the middle of the peninsula of Florida, over in Orlando, sitting at 83 degrees here for this Friday afternoon. So the current temperatures here across the state of Georgia, most of the numbers are in the 60s, a few areas in the 70s as you make your way closer to the coast. 77 in Jacksonville, 76 in Tallahassee, 72 in Brunswick is the only number that we see that's popping up to the 70s here in Georgia. And it does appear that we do just continue to have maybe a slightly cooler air mass in place down here in the southeast corner of the United States. Numbers across central Georgia scattered about the low in the mid and the upper 60s, but this is a pretty substantial increase compared to what we saw as of this morning. We had some numbers get as low as 46 degrees as we walked outside this morning. That was Macon, that was Butler, and that was down in Eastman. So as far as Macon goes, we've seen a 20-degree temperature increase already over the course of really just about 4 or 5 hours since we hit that morning low close to around 7 to 7:30 this morning. Winds and wind gusts, they are still holding strong into the picture, still pretty widespread. Occasional gusts up to 17 miles per hour. I think for the most part, we are going to continue to watch a downtick in the magnitude of these winds. So 17-mile-per-hour gusts, that's going to be a bit abnormal for the rest of today. But I do just want to turn your attention to the direction of these winds, which we were talking about just a second ago with that camera view at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. So they are moving in out of the east. And as of Thursday, they were coming in from the northwest. So we have seen them kind of move around the compass on clockwise direction, and they will continue that motion as they go into the bottom of the compass, and they will start to maintain a southerly direction as we go later on into tonight. So here's where things stand for your Friday. There's no moisture whatsoever. You have to go down to the Atlantic coast of southeast Georgia, getting into northeast Florida, St. Simons, Brunswick, St. Mary's, Jacksonville. Those areas have a little bit of moisture, but overall it's not really humid, and much of the southeast is continuing to be very dry. In fact, I think we can almost spot where the center of high pressure is right now, kind of centered right here, pretty close to Charlotte, North Carolina. That clockwise rotation that is continuing to be more and more widespread, but that's why our winds are continuing to blow in from the east right now. And a quick look at your dew point temperatures just to reemphasize that it is a dry environment. Dew point temperatures somewhere in the upper 30s or the low 40s, maybe even the mid 40s in a couple of locations, but not near to the threshold that they need to be in order for, say, some pop-up rain chances, or especially if we're talking about temperatures in the 90s that could make some numbers feel a little bit warmer than what they actually read. So yes, we are getting into that time frame, and we will talk a little bit about that as we go into the end of the weekend. Satellite and radar image. Here's a look at crystal clear skies. For the most part, you can see a couple of very faint images of some clouds that are more than likely higher up in the sky, farther down in our southernmost counties. We didn't have a camera that was pointed in that direction, but overall it's just going to create maybe a bit of fuzziness, not that deep blue color in the sky, just going to be a mostly clear environment down in these areas that are still holding on to a little bit of cloud cover. But honestly, clouds are really hard to come by, not only in Georgia, but just in the southeast where this image continues to be mighty quiet. Don't worry, things are going to be changing as we go into the end of the weekend. We'll start to welcome back some more cloud cover, but let's go ahead and talk about some numbers first and foremost. 80 for a high temperature yesterday compared to the average high of 86 degrees. So yesterday it was pleasantly warm. I was taking Aspen on a walk yesterday and I was breaking a little bit of a sweat, but overall those numbers are going to get a whole lot warmer. So soak up not only this afternoon while it does last, but I hope that you did soak up yesterday afternoon with some outdoor plans to enjoy the afternoon and the evening. 51 for a morning low as of yesterday. So this is Thursday morning. Friday morning's low definitely took it a little bit lower. So I think that's really the only aspect that you're going to be different in between your Thursday and your Friday. High temperature overall, I think is just going to be pretty much the same. I have a high temperature in the low 80s as we begin the weekend. But low 80s still going to fall below that average mark. And honestly, this has just become the normal for the month of May, being below average for your high temperatures, with the exception of those 2 days that you do see the red box on with an 86 and an 87 degree high temperature. So still not even creeping up to our warmest temperature we have seen in 2026 so far. That once again goes back to April 17th where we had a high temperature of 91 degrees, but it wasn't a stretch of 90s. We were premature to hit that 90-degree mark. However, now we are looking to settle in to a stretch of the 90-degree temperatures, and that's going to continue to become the normal. We're almost in the end of the month of May. Memorial Day weekend is next weekend. That's the unofficial start of summer. And then, of course, we get into June, July, and August. Yes, these are going to be some very hot and humid months across central Georgia, so go ahead and brace yourself. So hour by hour, we will see the climb into the upper half of the 70s, near the 80-degree mark as we round out the afternoon and transition into the evening. I think our temperatures will creep up a little bit higher than that, maybe 81, 82, or an 83 that gets recorded for your high temperature today. So as we go into your Friday evening, crystal clear skies will remain in the picture. We creep into your Saturday morning. It looks like a couple clouds are trying to build back into the forecast, but there's plenty more where that came from, back over to the west. And all of that cloud cover will continue over to the east, just like the clouds ahead of it. But for the most part, all of your Saturday afternoon is looking mostly sunny. I know obviously there's a lot of clouds, but most of this cloud cover is going to be of the thinner nature, not going to block too much of your sunshine, and you will see that reciprocated on your afternoon high temperatures. But it doesn't look like anything bubbles up except for maybe the non-zero chance of a sprinkle shower. We did see a couple of light green dots try to bubble up around central Georgia. It's not something worth putting too much stock into. Don't be surprised if you see a very light shower or a mist throughout the afternoon on Saturday, but overall, I'm just not buying that we have enough moisture to create those pop-up rain chances like we will once we transition into Sunday. So as far as your Friday night plans and your Saturday afternoon and evening plans go, even your Saturday morning plans, good to go. Weather's not going to be an excuse. It is going to be a little bit chillier, or I should say cooler in the morning on Saturday as opposed to what we will see on Sunday, but not quite as cool as what we walked out the door to on Friday. Afternoon high temperatures, you're just going to want to make sure that you stay hydrated throughout the day on Saturday. Now let's transition into Sunday. I did mention it's going to be a warmer start to the day, and these winds continuing to filter in out of the south and the southeast, they are going to be a big reason why. As we go into the afternoon, take a look at what happens. A lot of the cloud cover attempts to clear. We get more peaks of sunshine, and bam, right after lunchtime, what's bubbling up in the picture? Showers and even a couple pockets where you will notice some red, indicating the potential for some thunderstorms. So this is a very summer-like forecast that we do have for Sunday, and the aspect that rain chances are non-existent for the morning. You get into that warmest window of the afternoon, right past lunchtime, temperatures kind of hit their peak, and that's going to continue to enhance that rising motion of all the moisture that we will have at the surface once we get back into Sunday. And this is going to continue to create scattered shower and storm chances. Not a guarantee that you see some rain, but I would plan on having the rain jacket ready just in case you do need it for any afternoon plans that are outdoors on Sunday, and continuing into the evening before finally we lose that sunshine, we lose that daytime heating, and then you see all this rain begin to fizzle out, and we're just left with some residual cloud cover before that cloud cover does attempt to clear as we go overnight into early Monday morning for next week. So I did mention the winds are going to be a big dictator in your forecast, and this is what we see. So those winds, they're right now coming out of the east, and I told you they're going to continue to shift direction, and they're going to come in from the south and the southeast. So that means they're moving in off the Atlantic coast, a bit of a sea breeze that will be a little bit more enhanced than what we typically see with those sea breezes. Normally it's just kind of a localized phenomenon that happens on the coast, but these winds will continue to be ushered up into central Georgia, and that's going to blow more moisture back into our forecast down at the surface already by your Saturday morning. This is the 10 a.m. time frame, dew point temperature of 60 degrees, which isn't overly humid by any means, but we are starting to creep back into the not bad category, which, yes, it doesn't feel too bad, but that is going to be enough moisture to maybe work with for a sprinkle or two. But those numbers only continue their climb as we progress farther into the weekend because those winds don't waver. They're still continuing to push in out of the south and the southeast. So that's what pushes this big cloud of some dark green back into the forecast. So we're talking about dew point temperatures in the upper 60s and the low 70s, which is a little bit more reminiscent of a summertime day. And obviously, we will talk about the dew point temperatures a whole lot over the next couple of months. But this is kind of just giving you a sneak peek preview about what's to come over the next few months. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. We have plenty of moisture to work with, so that's checkbox number one. But once we get into the afternoon, a couple hours after 9 a.m., say around 12 into 1 or 2, that's when the temperatures will warm up somewhere near 90 degrees for a high temperature. So near 90-degree high temperatures, you have some dew point temperatures, upper 60s, low 70s. That will continue to create some pop-up rain chances in the form of not only showers, but we can see some pretty enhanced rising motion, some pretty enhanced updrafts, and that is going to continue to produce maybe even a core of a thunderstorm or two. So make sure that you are on the lookout for that, but not a guarantee that you do see rain like I mentioned, and it looks like we're trying to keep the moisture in the forecast as we go all the way into Sunday night, but we'll talk about what is in store after we get through Sunday night all the way into your Monday afternoon, because we could have the potential for maybe even another pop-up shower or even a storm as we go into each and every afternoon from that moment after. So I wanted to take it over to the future view rainfall graphic. And like I mentioned, not a guarantee that you see rain. You see plenty of locations that are not even recording 1/10 of an inch of rain. You'll see plenty that are recording maybe about 3/10 of an inch, 4, 5/10 of an inch, or even up to 7/10 of an inch in Sparta. So some of these localized areas, not pinpointing where, excuse me, don't get locked in onto what location says what. We always talk about this as a general temperature range. So you'll always have the potential for maybe seeing some of these higher values. Does this mean that Sparta is going to see 3/4 of an inch of rain over the course of this weekend, really just going into Sunday? No, absolutely not. And I would bet a lot of money that Sparta doesn't see that much rain, but some areas maybe just outside of Sparta, maybe down in Milledgeville, maybe it happens here in Macon. Some isolated pockets are going to have the potential for maybe some totals that get closer to an inch in nature, but that's also going to come at the cost of receiving a thunderstorm where those heavier rainfall rates are kind of training over the same areas or sitting over the same areas. If you're just getting some scattered showers that only last, 15, 20 minutes into the afternoon, you're very likely not going to see anything that's even recordable in the way of rain, or you might see 1/10 or 2 of an inch of rain depending on how steady and heavy the rainfall is. So what I would count on is areas that do receive some rain, maybe a couple 1/10 of an inch that will continue to supplement and add to the totals that we've seen already through the month of May, which have been fairly impressive. But overall, unless you catch a thunderstorm, and I would imagine it could be maybe even something in the way of a stronger thunderstorm that would dump some totals that would get closer to an inch in nature. So here's a look at your weekend outlook. 45 for a morning low on Friday. Yes, it was just continuing to be shocking to see how much that number was just dropping down and dropping down and dropping down each time I kept forecasting out into the future. 82 degrees for a high temperature on your Friday afternoon, 89 as you roll into Saturday afternoon. So that's where you're kind of getting into borderline hot territory because, of course, these numbers are just above average for this time of year, but it's been a while since we've experienced temperatures this warm. We really haven't experienced it too much throughout the month of May so far, like I showed you on that calendar graphic. 12 out of 14 days so far have been below average, and after Friday, it's going to make 13 out of 15 days that have been below average. So it looks like we're not only kind of flipping the script, but we are going to get into a stretch of some near 90-degree high temperatures, which are all going to be above average for this time of year. I do want to note your morning low on Saturday. We could see some values that do dip down below 53 degrees, so make sure you have the light layering ready for maybe one more morning. But by the time we roll into Sunday, that increase in moisture is really going to play a role in our forecast, and it's going to knock the numbers up by a good margin. How about this? Your morning low on Sunday, 11 degrees warmer than what we do see on Saturday. And of course, Sunday afternoon is looking to be a very similar feeling afternoon near the 90-degree mark. But it is worth noting, if you receive some increased cloud cover, you receive some rain or even a thunderstorm, those numbers are going to bump down very likely into the 70s, maybe somewhere into the low 80s in light of the rain-cooled air. So your numbers may not make it necessarily that high. Do want to talk about some weekend plans that you may have. If you have plans to head over to the west, not up 441, the Georgia Bulldogs are squaring off against the Auburn Tigers. And in fact, they've already played game one. The Dogs pulled out a nail-biter 2-1 on Thursday night. Well, game two also going to be on Friday night. And the reason I am giving you this forecast is because Plainsman Park over in Auburn, only 2 hours away. And guess what? You could get off of work at 5 p.m. today, take that 2-hour trip over to the west, be there by 7 o'clock. That's already an hour before game time, right? Well, this is going to be that is going to be an hour before Eastern time. You are going to gain an hour back, so it is going to be 6 p.m. at Auburn, but of course the game time is still going to be at the same time. It's just going to be at 7 p.m. Central as opposed to Eastern. But moral of the story is you can get off of work at your normal time, hightail it over to the west and cross the state line, and you can be at Plainsman Park an hour before first pitch, and it's going to be some spectacular weather for it. First pitch is actually going to be a little bit before sunset, so 7:34 p.m. Remember, 7 p.m. Central Time is when that game is going to get started over in Auburn. So you'll still have a little bit of sunshine, but the sun is going to set, and that number of 75 degrees is going to get a tad bit cooler as you go into the game, or the middle innings, and then eventually into the late innings. Game 3 going to be Saturday at 3 p.m. There is going to be a very minuscule sprinkle chance, like I was talking about here in Central Georgia. I think the chances are a little bit greater over to the west. There's slightly more moisture in the forecast over there, but 85 degrees and partly cloudy skies are going to be the main story. But if you want to stay in state and you want to go watch some pro ball, well, the Braves are finally back in town. They started a home series earlier this week against the Cubs, and they won that 2 out of 3 after a 10-day stretch over on the West Coast. Well, they are facing off against the Boston Red Sox this weekend, Friday and Saturday, same game time, 7:15, and then Sunday going to be an afternoon game at 1:35. Sunday is going to be the iffy day. That's where we have the possible pop-up rain that we were talking about here in Central Georgia. Those chances are also going to exist up in Atlanta. Not a guarantee that there will be some rain, but if there is a pop-up thunderstorm pretty close to Truist Park, then that could prompt something in the way of a lightning delay. Guess I forgot to change the icon for Game 2. It's just going to be a little bit warmer, but it is going to be a story of partly cloudy skies. There's not going to be any rain chances for Game 2 on Saturday night, just a temperature of 85 that will once again get cooler as the night progresses. And your afternoon highs here back in Central Georgia, near 90 degrees for not only the last 2 days of your weekend, but maybe even soaring into the low 90s as we go into Monday and Tuesday, which brings me to my next point. A lot of you are probably getting out and about, taking the pets on walks. So obviously when we're getting into this range, 90 to 95 degree air temperatures, the concrete and asphalt is going to be anywhere from around 125 to 140, or we could even see asphalt temperatures get as high as 155 degrees. So do not walk your pets in the middle of the day. That's something that I'm having to transition with Aspen and not take her out in the middle of the afternoon when I get off of work from the early morning shift. You are going to want to make sure that you're walking them in the evening hours when it's a little bit cooler, or earlier in the morning when it's not as hot. But obviously, if you can't avoid the timing of it, you have to take your pets out throughout the middle of the day, maybe heading out to do something a little bit later. Make sure that you're just keeping them off those harder surfaces like concrete and asphalt, especially asphalt. If you had to choose one over the other, it would be concrete, but still don't want their paws on that warm concrete. So 90 degrees. So we were talking about it. We've hit it once already, but it was just for one singular day. Now it looks like this is going to be the first stretch of entering the 90s. And I've been talking about it just with coworkers, with people out in the community, with my family. And yes, believe it or not, we are used to seeing the 90s a little bit earlier than what we are currently seeing. The average first 90-degree day comes on May 5th. So that's getting into last Tuesday. Cinco de Mayo is typically the first 90-degree day that we do see. But once you hit that 90-degree mark for the first time, we start to flirt with it and we start to hit it a whole lot more. So we're getting into the month of May, bit of a preview of summer, and even a lot of our record high temperatures are sitting in the upper 90s as of previous days. So we are kind of running according to schedule, if not a little bit behind schedule for entering a stretch of 90-degree high temperatures. So even though it may seem a little bit early, I know obviously we're still at the tail end of the school season. You may think, okay, right around Memorial Day weekend, maybe after, that's when the 90s start to come in. You guys know by now, Central Georgia likes to get a bit of an early start to the summer. Morning low temperatures, they're going to have a more pleasant feel to them. We're not going to be dealing with this slightly cool or chilly feeling that I have been referring to over the last few days. After we get through tomorrow, your morning lows soar into the mid-60s, Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday, and that also looks to continue into the back half of the midweek next week. I did want to turn your attention to the humidity graphic as we go into next week, where it does look like the moisture levels do peak sometime around Monday. We might see a downtick into Tuesday, and then we'll start to see it go back up Wednesday and Thursday. I don't typically buy what that graphic does say about the last 3 days on it, because we do see a lot of fluctuation, but I do buy the aspect that we are seeing increasing moisture day by day as we go into this weekend. So let's go into Monday, where it does look like pop-up specks of blue and green are going to be possible. Chances are better according to the GFS on Tuesday into the afternoon and especially the nighttime hours. But just know that the possibility of rain is going to be there for both Monday and Tuesday. But Wednesday all the way into Thursday, that's where I'm buying more widespread chances because a frontal boundary is going to begin to slowly push down into the south and the southeast. And what that could do is kind of create on and off rain chances that are pretty widespread all throughout Wednesday and Thursday. Give us some of that soaking and that much needed rain that we are in desperate need of. And then it does appear that next Friday, right at the beginning of Memorial Day weekend, this would be perfect timing. We get the rain right before it. The front starts to pass through and clear as we go into next Friday. And that could set up a dry forecast as we go into your Memorial Day weekend for Saturday, Sunday, and continuing into the following Monday. In terms of how much rain could we be getting, well, the European right here is saying maybe only a couple tenths of an inch of rain, some isolated pockets that could get closer to an inch. But the GFS is the one that we definitely want to buy stock into. Obviously, somewhere around an inch to maybe even an inch and a half of rain. So yes, not as substantial as what we did see last week, but this is just continuing to add and supplement to the impressive totals we've seen so far. So going to continue to keep our fingers crossed that scenario does play out. Excuse me one more time. I apologize for the coughing. So now let's take a look at your temperature outlook as we do get into that window starting next Friday, going into the following Thursday, that last week of the month of May. We have a good chance of seeing some above normal temperatures. In fact, about a 50 to 60% chance of continuing with the above normal temperatures. Now, by that time frame, it is very likely going to be some near 90-degree high temperatures or going to be somewhere in the low 90s because your average is going to creep up to 89 degrees for a high temperature by the time we reach the end of the month of May. Well, it also looks like the above average numbers might be paired up with some decent moisture because we do have also an above normal chance, a 40 to 50% chance of seeing above normal rainfall through that same time period, May 22nd through the 28th. So while we have kind of hit this lull in the weather, a bit of a dry stretch, it does look like we could be ending the month of May on a bit of a wetter note, and that would be some good news. We definitely need to be above average for the month of May, and we'll keep our fingers crossed we can keep doing the same thing through June, July, all the way into the fall, so we can eventually, at long last, get out of the drought conditions. So Memorial Day going to be 10 days away, and of course the weekend is going to get started a week from today. So that is going to be kind of the next thing to look forward to for many of you. Well, something that we are not looking forward to, but we are keeping a close eye on and obviously trying to bring you all the information about start of hurricane season. That will be on the first day of the month of June. So once we kind of start transitioning into that official time frame of the summer, then yes, it is going to mark the start of tropic season. Juneteenth going to be exactly 5 weeks away from today. So it is going to be on a Friday, and then that following Sunday is not only just going to be Father's Day, it is also going to mark the first official day of astronomical summer. In fact, the start of hurricane season, June 1st, that is going to start the beginning of meteorological summer. So meaning that we're getting into that warmest portion of the year. And while hurricane season is going to start on June 1st, we're not going to see a lot of tropical activity that is going to be out in the Atlantic, out in the Caribbean, out in the Gulf. We're not going to see too much until we get closer to that peak on September 10th. So here's a look at your frequency graphic, which I do enjoy showing just to kind of illustrate that once we get into the month of August, that's when we really see activity start to ramp up. The official peak, the frequency of hurricanes and just named storms out in the tropics and the Atlantic Basin does happen around September 10th, and then we typically see a good frequency of activity until we get somewhere in the midway point of the month of October. We do see a secondary peak right here around October 15th, and then after that, the activity really dies down as we transition into the month of November. So the beginning on June 1st, we can actually see tropical activity before the beginning of hurricane season, so we will keep an eye out for that. It very rarely happens. Although, and then once we get into the month of November, that's typically the least active time frame of tropic season, even less active than this time frame from the beginning of May into the beginning of June, where activity has popped up in years past. So in terms of what we're expecting, on average, we typically see 14, 7, and 3 for tropical storms, hurricanes, and then major hurricanes, which are category 3 or higher. 2025, last year, it was technically a below average year in terms of the tropical storms and the hurricanes, but we saw 4 major hurricanes out of the 5 hurricanes that we did have. So by that standard, it was an above average year, but very thankfully, none of those did make landfall in the continental United States. However, we did see some pretty drastic impacts in areas of the Caribbean and such. Well, what Colorado State is forecasting is pretty similar numbers to last year, except for not as many major hurricanes, which would be some good news. But we are going to get another hurricane forecast next Thursday at 11 a.m. So hopefully I can bring you the latest data for what NOAA predicts for your hurricane season. But they are going to give us a range. They're not going to give us those set numbers like Colorado State. That's why we typically go off Colorado State. It's more of a set in stone prediction. But that will be happening next Thursday, and we will continue to kind of turn our focus into tropic season as we do creep into the summertime months. But until then, enjoy your weekend. Soak up this beautiful weather we have for Friday. Make sure you're hydrating throughout the day. On Saturday, it is going to be a hot one, and be prepared to duck and dodge a pop-up shower or a storm that we could see throughout Sunday afternoon and evening. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back Monday at 11 a.m. with another look at your extended forecast.